Welcome, dear students, to this class on the Poetry by Marianne Moore. Marianne Moore is an American modernist poet who is well known among other writers like T.S. Eliot, Wallace Stevens, William Carlos Williams. She won the Pulitzer Prize for Literature, and she is known for syllabic poetry. The poem that we are learning, Poetry, the title is Poetry, and it's an example of syllabic poem, and in free verse she doesn't use any regular metrical pattern or rhythmical pattern or stanza form. So, and also the imagery used is very much complicated, or very complex imagery is used. Another feature of this poem is that it's a poem about a poem. It's about the process of writing a poem. Unlike other poems that we have learned in this anthology, like Spelling by Atwood, a musical instrument by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, this particular poem, it's about creativity. It's about writing poetry in general. It's not about female creativity. All other poems, it's about female writing. But here she writes about writing or poetry in general. She talks about what is interesting in a poem, or what makes a poet, or how she makes a distinction between a real poet and a half poet or a poetess. So that is what we find in this poem. So we will read the poem first and we'll make an analysis of this. I want you to turn to page number 53. And the poet starts the poem like this. I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. Hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise, if it must. These things are important, not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are useful. So this is how she begins the poem. So she says she dislikes something, and what is it? It's actually in the title, that is poetry. She says, she makes an ironic comment here. She says, I dislike poetry. I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle, beyond all this nonsense, beyond all this fiddling, beyond all these things which are trivial. There are something which is, there are things which are very important in life. And she begins the poem by saying that poetry is not that important, because she actually cites certain reason why she herself is a poet, and she says poetry is not something that is useful for mankind, or poetry is not, it's nonsense, it is trivial. And why? Because maybe she's referring to the modernist poet, many of the modernist poets who used complex imagery which are unintelligible, and the critics with their high sounding interpretations. And so she was trying to say that poetry lost its beauty, lost its purpose in the modern era, and that is why she makes this comment, says, I too dislike it, and there are many other things which are important in life. But however, then she comes to the point, but even though she thinks that, seeing these kinds of modernist poems, she says it is not important, it's not, I don't like it. But when she read some poetry, some piece of poetry, she finds that there is a place for genuine. In the midst of all this fiddle, there is something which is genuine in poetry. So she finds certain poems which are interesting or which are genuine. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt, and she talks about it with contempt. This fiddle with form, meter, this complex imagery and allusions used in the modern era. So, reading, however, with perfect contempt for it, one discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. So, after all, there is place for genuine. There is a genuine poetry somewhere or the other. Maybe in the midst of a long poem, you find certain stanzas interesting or genuine. And then she gives an imagery, very complex imagery. She says, hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise, if it must. These things are important not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are useful. So then she says, she found a piece of poetry or poem which excited her senses, which appealed to her senses. All these images, hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise, all these images, they refer to the physical responses one gets, while reading genuine poetry. So she says, she found certain poems which actually aroused such physical responses in her. And she says those poems are genuine, those poems are interesting, not because there is this possibility of a high sounding interpretation for them, but because they are useful. These poetry, the certain poems, they excite, they arouse our senses, they appeal to our senses. And those poems are interesting, or those poems are beautiful or genuine, not because there is a possibility of a high sounding interpretation. And then she says, we cannot really appreciate certain things which are very complex or which are unintelligible. So she says, when they become so derivative as to become unintelligible. So in the modern era, poetry has become derivative, or it's not original anymore. It's not a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It is a complex, learned process, and it's an outcome of your intellect rather than your emotions and imagination. So she's actually, maybe you can say that, this particular poem is actually a critique of modernist poetry. When they become so derivative as to become unintelligible. The same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire, that we cannot understand. So in real life, we don't really admire things that we don't understand. Similarly, if we don't understand a piece of writing with its complex imagery and complex structure and complex allusions, we don't really appreciate it. Only if the poem is simple, lucid, and appeals to our senses, we will appreciate it. So when they become so derivative and unintelligible, we don't really understand it, and we don't appreciate it, or we don't admire that. Then she brings in a set of imagery. She's actually known for her use of animal imagery. We find such imagery here. When they become so derivative as to become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. The bat holding upside down or in a quest of something to eat, elephants pushing, a wild horse taking a roll, a tireless wolf under a tree, the immovable critic twitching his skin like a horse that feels a flea, the baseball fan, the statistician, nor is it valid to discriminate against business documents and school books. So we find a few images here. One is of the bat holding upside down. Then we find a wild horse taking a roll in the forest, a tireless wolf under the tree. Then there is an immovable critic who is jerking like a horse that feels a flea on its face. Then you find a baseball fan, the statistician, nor is it valid to discriminate business documents and books. All these phenomena are important. So that is what she says, all these phenomena, and we don't really if we, in one level, we can say that all these phenomena are different, and we cannot say that one is valid and the other is not. The bat's condition, the horse, the elephant, we cannot say that, or the statistician's life, the baseball fan. So we cannot say that one is better or one is valid and the other is not. All these phenomena are important. And then she moves on to say that even we cannot make a discrimination between business documents and school books, and we cannot say that one is valid, one is inferior to the other, or one is superior to the other. Actually, there is this reference to Leo Tolstoy's phrase, this business documents and school books, when he actually says that we cannot consider this as poetry, he excludes them from the purview of poetry. And she refers to that, but makes a different argument. Says all these phenomena are important. The bats thing holding upside down, the elephants pushing, the wild horse, the wolf, and though we don't know the intention of all these things, we don't know why they do that, but nevertheless, they are all important. All these phenomena are important. And also, in another level, we can say that because the next line explains that one must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half poets, the result is not poetry. So she says that in another level, all this imagery, if a real poet handles all this, it can be converted into real poetry. But when dragged into prominence, when these images, when these things are dragged into prominence by a half poet, then it is not poetry. Then the result is not poetry. A learned scholarly person with his intellect, when he drags all this phenomena into prominence, it is not poetry. That is what she says. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half poets, the result is not poetry. Not till the poets among us can be literals of imagination, above insolence and triviality, and can present for inspection imaginary gardens with real thoughts in them. Shall we have it? So she makes this, she asks this question. So she says, she talks about half poets, and then she talks about real poets, the literals of the imagination, who escapes all this triviality or a fiddle with forms and structure, and can present before us for inspection imaginary garden with real toads in it, so that it will arouse a physical response. This is connected to the first image of hands that can grasp, eyes that dilate, hand that rise. So when you write something so real, or imaginary garden with real toads, so it's an imaginary piece, but you can the physical responses are as if it is real. So if a poet can do that, then it is real poetry, and that is a real poet according to her. And also she says, only that sort of poetry comes from a genuine raw material. We'll continue that. In the meantime, if you demand on one hand the raw material of poetry in all its rawness, and that which is on the other hand genuine, then you are interested in poetry. So here she actually picks at critics as well. Critics in the modern era, they are preoccupied with high sounding interpretations. But if you are really interested in poetry, if you are a real critic who appreciates poetry not for its high sounding interpretation, then you will look for the raw material with all its rawness that helps to, or that creates these physical responses in the reader. I hope you got it, right? How she begins with these images of real poetry, which creates this physical response, and she moves on to say that the half poets cannot write such poetry which can create such physical responses in us. And she says, the real poet will create imaginary garden with real toads in it, so that we can feel it. We can feel with our physical senses, with our senses. And then she says, about the critic as well. It's not about high sounding interpretation, but if you are genuinely interested in poetry, you will look into the raw material of poetry, which is genuine. The genuine raw material is appreciated, not about the high sounding interpretations. We'll read the poem once again. I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. Hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise. If it must, these things are important, not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are important, they are useful. When they become so derivative as to become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. The bat holding on upside down or in quest of something to eat, elephants pushing, a wild goose taking a roll, a tireless wolf under a tree, the immovable critic twitching his skin like a horse that feels a flea, the baseball fan, the statistician, nor is it valid to discriminate against business documents and school books. All these phenomena are important. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half poets. The result is not poetry. No, till the poets among us can be literalists of the imagination, aboving solace and triviality, and can present for inspection imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Shall we have it? In the meantime, if you demand on one hand the raw material for poetry in all its rawness and that which is on other hand genuine, then you are interested in poetry. I hope it is clear. So she begins by saying, we first initially we think that it's an ironic statement that she makes. She says, as a poet, she is a poet herself and says she dislikes it, and then she says, even though she reads it with perfect contempt, there is a place for genuine. There are certain poetic pieces which are genuine and cause these physical responses from us. And then she moves on to say that critics make high sounding interpretations, but a poem is important or useful not because it can give a high sounding interpretation, but because it can give rise to these physical responses in the author, in the reader. And then she moves on to say that real poets don't write derivative poetry or poetry which are unintelligible, because those poetry is not appreciated by people, because they don't admire things that they don't understand. And then we find a set of phenomena which are equally, all are equally important, but are different, and the causes are unknown. But nevertheless, when these images are brought into prominence by real poets, then it is poetry. But when it is handled by half poets, scholarly people from intellect, when they do that, it's not poetry. But when it comes from your heart, when it is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, then it is real poetry. And then she says a real poet can create real toads in the imaginary garden, so that you can feel it, you can touch it, you can sense it, you can see it. Physical responses are aroused. And if you are really interested in poetry, you will be looking for the rawness of the material, the genuineness of the material. You will not go after high sounding words, or you won't go after the trivial play with a form or structure. No, you'll be talking about the rawness of the material, and then you are interested in poetry. I hope you have understood the poem. Please read the poem once or twice, and if you have any doubts, please free to message me, and I'll be uploading a few reading materials as well for these poems. Thank you. Have a good day.